Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very tall leader from the software business in the US, Mr. Tan Moorthy. Tan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Tan is the Executive Vice President of Infosys Limited. He's the Head of Delivery Operations for US, Canada, and Latin America. He has also been the Global Head for Education, Training, and Assessments. So, Tan, before we get into the software business, I want to start by asking you, tell me about the key professional decisions that influenced your career.
First of all, thank you so much for having me on your program. Delighted to be here. Let me also start by saying that everything I say is my personal opinion and nothing to do with what Infosys thinks about it. So, having said that, I've had the good fortune to be in the IT industry, the best of its times so far, and I've had a few things that have happened along the way. As I look back on my career in this industry, I think there were a few decisions that did change the course of my journey. The first one was my decision to move from working on what used to be called systems programming in the early 80s to application programming. While I enjoyed the intellectual challenge of working on compilers and operating systems, I felt a void in not being able to work with customers. And so when Windows 3.0 was released, many people may or may not remember those times, but I made a shift into applications development, which has changed my trajectory. The second was the decision to relocate to India from the US in 2000, though it was 2001 by the time I moved. This was a time when most people wanted to come to the US, but given how the outsourcing industry in India started to grow from that time, I was lucky to move to the center of the action. I was actually pleasantly surprised when this move resulted in more interactions with clients than less, as I had feared, because now I could meet clients for an extended period of time at our campus versus the brief interactions that were possible at their offices in the US.
Right.
And the third was the decision to move from business to head the education and research group at Infosys in the mid 2000, largely due to a passion for people development. The move into corporate functions at that time later gave me the opportunity to become the group head of HR for Infosys, and of course, been an experience that I have been able to leverage to operationalize the localization strategy of Infosys. Wow. And I think in all of these instances, I've been lucky that the moves did pay off, and I've had managers who supported my decision.
Well, I think you're being very, very modest, but what an amazing career you've had, Tan. And just for our viewers and listeners, how many people does Infosys employ?
We had our results yesterday, 292,000 today. When I joined, we were about 7,000 people.
Wow. And I should have mentioned right up front, congratulations on your incredible results.
Yeah, and that's been great. It's been great, I think.
Absolutely. So let's now talk about the software business a little bit, Dan. The software business in India really took off from 1999 onwards in what used to be then called Y2K, if I remember correctly. But what were some of your key challenges as you made Infosys into a global powerhouse?
Yeah, I think, like I said, having joined Infosys at a time when we were less than $500 million in annual revenue, and now, like you said, yesterday's results, we did $4.2 billion in a quarter, right? And what that has helped give me is an opportunity to get a near ringside view of this growth. That to me has been a result of the strong value systems and the foundations laid by the founders. Powered by intellect, driven by values, captures the essence of the ethos at Infosys that has made this possible. Amazing. Of course, any transformation comes with its challenges, and I think during the early days, it was about convincing clients about the value proposition. Those days, conversations with prospects had to start with a map of the world to show where India was before the discussion could even move towards Infosys.
Wow.
But from there, ensuring that in every instance, we delivered more than what the client expected has been key to earning client trust in their business. A relentless focus on quality, putting in place appropriate systems and processes to scale. And above all, I think recruiting the right talent with a focus on constantly upgrading their skills have all been key to the growth of Infosys.
And, I'm sure your stint in HR had a very large amount to do with the training and recruitment of the right people.
So, the focus on learning, actually, where I started my journey into the corporate functions with education, the Infosys focus on that is very evident from the massive investment in the Global Education Center in Mysore, where we can train over 14,000 people. And it was a great opportunity to be part of that transition, where we used to train about 4,000 people to scale it up to the 14,000 plus that we then got to do. And so that was a big transition, because scale to us comes from having the right competent people, and training is an element that makes people competent. So the focus on learning still continues with this online platform that we have now rolled out. Luckily, we rolled it out before the pandemic, which helps the entire global employee base to acquire relevant skills. And now an US education center is also ready for us to train both employees and clients in the region. So all of those contribute to the critical growth for the company.
Incredible. So, I've often wondered what goes into building a global company like Infosys. And when I say global, I mean, you might be present in almost every country of the world. What goes into building such a global company, and how do you manage culture?
Great question. I think and of course, today we are in, I think, 46 countries, but there are a lot of companies out of India now that are global, which is a great thing. While client focus and constant innovation to stay relevant are important for any company, I think a sharp and relentless focus on earning the trust of the stakeholders becomes even more critical when your starting point is not a developed country. And I think the focus at Infosys on good corporate governance and transparency have all been very critical in that journey. For example, Infosys was the first Indian company to be listed on NASDAQ. Infosys has won several awards over the years for corporate governance.
Wow.
And equally important has been the focus on client success and creating a brand that every stakeholder feels proud to be associated with. So to me, I think the relentless focus on excellence and to be the best in whether it is the campus or a client deliverable is critical to ensure that global recognition.
Fascinating. So one of the questions that is often asked about Indian software or tech companies is that they have relied very largely in the early days on sending people and getting the people arbitrage, if I can use that term. Now, of course, we're beginning to see products coming out of software companies. My question to you is that when will this become like a huge wave of products and higher value-added products coming out of our Indian software companies?
I think the contribution of the Indian companies sometimes becomes understated, because a lot of it is looked at from the arbitrage perspective, like you said. But I think while that perhaps was a starting point, things have moved from cost to quality. And a long time ago, actually, it's more on the total cost for an organization. The second is really a critical element, which is about filling the competence gap that exists for any company to grow, whether it is a healthcare company or a software product company. So the companies from India have contributed significantly to that, though I think it gets dwarfed by how the numbers get played out. Having said that, I'll also say that there have been products, Finacle from Infosys, that are used by global banks as an example of that. But the time now is to move from both, in my mind, services and products to more and more platforms, and I think India is very well prepared to be a leader in this area.
Right.
The experience of providing a platform for large populations, whether in the education, retail, healthcare, or payments, all have the potential to position India as the dominant provider of platforms in the future.
Wow. That's an amazing perspective you've given me today. That the move is towards platforms, and India is well positioned to deliver large platforms. Wonderful. So one of the other things that I have also seen with most companies, and I guess this would apply to tech companies as well, that when you are scaling up, you need a certain set of skills, which I'm sure the Infosys founders had. But when you are a global player, $4.5 billion a quarter, you need a very, very different set of skills. And yet a lot of the old leadership is still running Infosys. What is the kind of retraining that a lot of the top leadership has been through?
I think the critical success comes from agility and the speed at which you respond to stay relevant. I think that is at the core, because while for any knowledge industry, competence is critical. If you don't use that in the context of what the client is looking to do, there's only so much you can get out of it. And therefore, the pace at which, for example, Infosys has brought in the relevant products. In the early days, we moved from, while Y2K was a scale builder, Infosys was very clear that we are not going to depend a large part of our business exclusively on Y2K. Right? Going into whether it was client server or internet, and now digital and cloud, and doing it at the pace at which the clients wanted, is what has kept Infosys at the forefront as today a digital transformation partner for clients.
Fantastic. And one of the challenges that I've seen with a lot of large tech companies is that once you become so large, bureaucracy tends to come in. And every day there are these very nimble startup tech companies which are beginning to snap at your heels. How is Infosys managing to stay small within a large environment?
Yeah, and I think the same thing about a bias towards action with speed. I think is the single most important thing in my mind to make that happen. It is also about being inclusive and creating a diverse workforce, so that you can get perspectives. For example, our localization journey in the US has been about what do you need to do for the local markets from a talent perspective. And therefore, having your ear to the ground, getting the pulse of what is required while keeping the culture of the organization, but still adapting to the needs, is perhaps the thing that helps Infosys and large companies to move fast and respond. While you would still have the need to put in systems and processes to make things consistent when you can't get away from it. And there is a role for those, but you can't let them drive your response.
Interesting. So moving on, a large amount of the software business, from my limited understanding, is always done at the site of the customer. With this pandemic and work from home, if you were to build a new team of people, what are the kind of people you would try and onboard?
Yeah, so on the part, of course, the pandemic has clearly demonstrated that the location of work is not as critical anymore. It busted the myth that everybody had to come into the office and be there on a certain time. But I think if we look at talent, to me, I've always used in my mind what I call a triple A model, which is ability, attitude, and alignment. Because the ability part comes from the competence and a willingness to learn. Attitude is about wanting to work with teams and making a difference to clients, and the grit to meet commitments. And while alignment is about bringing passion to work because of a match between individual purpose and organizational goals. So that's how I've always looked at talent. And I think it's more relevant now than ever before.
Absolutely. So before I move to your role as the HR head, I've got to ask you one more question. And I'm going to give myself the liberty of being a little parochial. You are an Indian top leader in America. Most or all the tech companies in America are led by Indians. What is it that is there in the education or the gene pool or the DNA of Indians that are making them leaders in every major tech company of the world?
I don't know that it is completely Indian to the reason for the success. So, if you look at a successful CEO, to me, there are 2 or 3 traits that are very, very important.
Okay.
Because the success of a company comes from its people, its products, and its performance.
Okay.
If you take those 3 elements that are required to be successful, then, for a CEO to be the one that leads it, the individual will have to know all 3 parts of an organization. And that comes from part of it from the ability to change, but part of it also from the tenure in the organization. So if you look at a lot of the CEOs today who are successful, I think you will find that they have been with the organization for a period of time that has helped them understand that culture.
Okay.
And as the number of people of Indian origin in corporate America increases, I think there is probably an increase in the number of CEOs of Indian origin as well.
Okay.
But I think it is all of those characteristics that makes that difference.
Okay, thank you. So, Tan, I'm now going to move to your role when you were the HR head of Infosys. I want to understand from you, what are the challenges in managing tech leaders?
If you look at people, especially those, and when you talk of tech, a lot of them come with a deep expertise in their areas of domain, which makes them very passionate about their area of work. And they're very focused on bringing that competence to work.
Okay.
And therefore, the impact they make to organizations is very significant. What some of these experts can benefit from, in my view, is understanding the value of empathy and being able to widen their network more through influence. So creating an ecosystem of coaching can go a long way in increasing the effectiveness of strong tech leaders. And I think it's also about surrounding people with those with a diverse perspective. Because that is what I think opens up minds.
Okay.
And helps people contribute significantly.
And my next question is on culture. You, as you mentioned, you're working in 46 countries. You must have got probably that many nationalities or maybe more working for Infosys.
More, yeah.
How do you manage across so many different cultures?
I think the key there is about recognizing that everybody has earned a right to be where they have reached by their work, and therefore trusting people in their roles, which is very essential for us to ensure that we build an inclusive culture in a very diverse world. And equally important to me is the need to spend time understanding the context of an individual. So listen first to be understood has to be the approach. So to me, trust and empathy are the key ingredients of success. And making an environment that is inclusive, where even the most feeble voice has a platform to be heard.
Wonderful. My next question is on aspirations. You have seen over 3 decades of tech leaders, tech gurus, and worked with all of them. Over the years, how have you seen aspirations evolve or change?
I think at the core of it, everybody wants to contribute and wants to succeed.
Okay.
Now, this translates to the basic human need for recognition and rewards, which has not changed.
Correct.
However, what perhaps has changed is the pace at which different generations expect to be recognized or rewarded. While somebody from an earlier generation could wait 4 to 5 years for a promotion, today's generation may want it in 1 or 2 years. And partly this has been fueled by the pace at which business is changing and partly by the sense of urgency that is felt by the workforce of today. But if you're able to address the core human needs, I think we can tap into the potential of people much more.
Fascinating. So I'm going to now move to another segment of our conversation, which is on valuation. I was talking to some of these large industrial family owners where they were very, very asset heavy organizations, invested in factories and plants and land, et cetera. And along come a group of young people who have something in tech that they have found, and their valuation shoots up into multiple billions. You, as an organization, are sitting in between. You are tech. You've got huge revenues. You've got huge valuations, and yet the small organizations which have not even made profit are beginning to come close to your valuations. I'd like to understand from you as a leader, what is it that should drive value? Profits or stock markets?
I think if you look at the purpose of an organization, the role it has to play goes beyond profits. I mean, it starts with a purpose. It has to be profit with a purpose.
Correct.
But there is a larger role of addressing, to me today, corporates perhaps are in a better position, or companies are in a better position to address the inequities in the world, because governments can only do so much. So if you look at that aspect, I think the value of an organization has to be on what it is doing for all stakeholders and not one. Now, and I think your point about how do these valuations come about, because for the smaller organizations, a lot of it comes from the VCs, while the stock market is the one who are evaluating the larger ones. Now, the VCs have a unique perspective of that company, right? But that others don't know. While and to the extent that that data that they have is unbiased and is used to value the company for everything they can do, I think that's fair. Stock markets, on the other hand, have multitudes of information, right? What the company is saying, what their stakeholders are saying, what analysts are saying, all of which goes into evaluating. So both have their own methodologies, but I think at the end of the day, corporates will be judged by the longevity and what they're doing to all stakeholders and not one.
Very well said. So I've time for two more questions, Tan, and I'm going to ask you these two questions, which I call personal questions. For someone who's been there, done that, sitting right at the apex of a tech business in the US, as you look back at life and from where you stand today, what does success mean to Tan?
To me, success is very simple. It's about having a good night's sleep, not feeling guilty about what I did or did not do during the day. And it's also about constantly looking for ways to bring a smile on somebody's face. And that's all it is to me.
Fascinating. And my last question to you, who or what inspires you?
The human potential to achieve what we dream and the opportunity to make a difference is really what inspires me. If you look around, the number of people, irrespective of their backgrounds, what they do to make a difference to humanity around, I think that is the potential that we have. With innovations in technology, the human potential is so much more amplified. So to me, what inspires me is how do we use all of this to constantly make a difference to the world around us?
Amazing. Dan, on that note, thank you so much. Thank you for talking to me about your journey, about the incredible achievements you have had as a part of Infosys in the US, coming back to India, leading the entire HR business, going back into the US, building an organization like Infosys into such a powerful organization there. Thank you for talking to me about some of your values and the values of your organization. And finally, thank you for talking to me about what two simple words mean to you: success and what inspires you. Thank you again and good luck.
Ashutosh, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been very kind. Success of organizations comes from teams. So I've been very blessed to have been part of an organization, joined perhaps at the right time, and the opportunity to do what I've been able to do. But thank you for what you do. I think bringing together messages from the world at large, I think, can make a difference to those that listen. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.